So what happens, though, is that you have this power differential perception, but you also have, that's not the reality. We assume equality, but that's not the reality. We ignore what I have on here, privilege. The privilege of coming into a setting and knowing that your way of having conversation is going to be the way that's going to happen. Usually when you talk about multi-ethnic settings or multi-ethnic conversation or multi-ethnic board meetings or those kinds of things, most people of color who are in these board meetings have to adjust and adapt to the majority white culture's way of doing things. And so we have to enter into a different mindset in order to fit into this board culture or this meeting culture or this staff culture that is driven by the majority culture's way of doing things. And that's where you get the privilege of saying, when I go to a meeting, I know that my way of running a meeting is going to be affirmed. In fact, the privilege is to think there is no other way to run a meeting. The privilege is to say, wait, this is how we've always done it. This is the way everybody does it. This is the way all people have done, since the beginning of time, where everybody has an equal say. Of course, that's the way it's supposed to be. But that's actually not, because most of the rest of us have operated under a different paradigm. And so part of the privilege is to not have to acknowledge the power differential dynamic. And this is one of the things about multicultural competency. Multicultural competence, to me, is not a skill set. It is a mindset. You come into it and you say, wait a minute, I don't quite understand what's going to happen here. Versus, I know exactly what needs to happen because this is the way we do things. That's privilege. To say, yeah, this is the way we run meetings. This is the way we do church. This is the way we do worship. We have to follow this liturgy. We have to follow this pattern because that's the way it's been done for thousands of years. No, because in different cultural contexts, it's different, and the privilege is the assumption that your way is the way that it's going to go. Let's go to the third characteristic. Color blindedness, and this I want to pick up on this theme from Vince. I think, to me, Genesis 1:27, I don't think we'll have time to get into the details of this, reminds us that when God created, and actually let's go to the next slide, when God created us in His own image, He created us with differences that are valid. So this is Genesis 1:27. If you know anything about Hebrew poetry operates in something called parallelism. Usually that means you make statement A, statement B, and then you follow it up with another statement that says pretty much the same thing, it's just in slightly different words. If you look at the book of Psalms, you'll see this parallelism over and over and over again. Oh Lord, how majestic is your name. Oh Lord, how awesome is your name. Something along those lines, you'll see that parallelism over and over again. A, statement B, restated A prime, B prime. This is what we call a tricolon parallelism, meaning three lines that say essentially the same thing. Follow along with me here. Statement A, God created man. Statement A prime, He created him. Statement A double prime, He created them. So slightly different language. Pronouns and proper nouns are interchanged a little bit there, but essentially same word structure and same statements are being made. God created man, He created him, He created them. So that's where the parallelism holds. Now follow the strain in B. In His own image, in the image of God. Again, same thing, saying the same thing with slightly different wording. And what's the third line? Male and female. So if the parallelism holds A, meaning they're giving the same language and words and same meaning, then parallelism should also hold B, and B. And therefore, this idea of male and female should be considered as an aspect of the image of God. Because the parallelism holds A down and B down, the image of God is male and female. Now, I'm not going to get into the gender dynamics of this. That's a totally different conversation that I think we should have. But what I want to point out, and this is what Martin Buber talks about, the I and thou relationship. That there's something in the Trinity, and a lot of the folks who are trying to understand this concept of the Trinity, there's something in the Trinity that requires not just one, but two or three. So that the male and female, the interdependence, the connectedness, the reliance upon each other as male and female is an essential part of the image of God. The image of God is not solitary, it is in community. And the dependence of that community in male and female is the same dependence we see between the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. So when we look at this idea of of made in the image of God, part of that image is male and female, I and thou, the differences that leads to the fullness of who God is. Now, given that then, what I'm calling for is that we need to treasure the differences rather than try to do away with those differences. We're not operating in a colorblind mode. We are operating in a multicolored, many-colored mode. And so our understanding is God created male and female for difference. We shouldn't do away with those differences. We should acknowledge the equality there, but we should also acknowledge the interdependence that is there. So we don't do away with our cultural differences. We acknowledge the interdependence of that. And going back to that stadium illustration, we need to hear each other's voices. So go backwards on this. So I'll give you 3 images of multicultural competencies. One is what we call the melting pot. And this was a very common thing you might remember from elementary school. You all remember Schoolhouse Rock? Yeah, the Great American Melting Pot. You threw Chinese people in there and Irish people in there, and everybody melted down into cream of mushroom and just came out as this one kind of gooey, mushroomy type of thing. Well, that was the melting pot, and that was the perception. And that was a very common sociological way of looking at America. We'll take your tired, your poor, and your huddled masses, but at the end of the day, we're going to boil you down to something that's going to look different because we're going to melt away your cultural uniqueness. And that's what sometimes colorblindness does. We're going to melt away your cultural uniqueness. Now, as one of my Native American friends said, Native people, we don't melt very well. And so we've tried to melt people and realized, you know what, it doesn't work that way because there are cultures that shouldn't melt. We shouldn't melt away these things. So we've abandoned that illustration when it comes to the Great American Melting Pot. Now we have this thing called the salad bowl. And these are the things that we talk about when we talk about multi-ethnic churches. Are we looking at melting down everybody's culture? By the way, some churches do that, don't they? They call it multi-ethnic church, but you know what? Check your culture at the door. If you're an African American, you can't bring your culture in with you, because this is a multi-ethnic church, and all of us have to leave our culture at the door, except probably the dominant culture. They don't have to check their culture at the door, because that's the dominant culture. And so what you get in a melting pot is do away with your culture and come into this color blindness. And now we think that everybody's the same, but again, that's not the reality. So many churches operate under the melting pot paradigm. They won't say it, but if you listen carefully, you're saying, oh, so in about 2 years, I'm going to look exactly like you, aren't I? I'm going to dress like you, talk like you, act like you. That's the melting pot, because they've melted away your culture and have replaced it with cream of mushroom. So now you get to the salad bowl. So the salad bowl, all right, this is a different view. You throw in different vegetables together. So now you've got room for romaine lettuce and iceberg, but you've got room for Napa cabbage. All right, Chinese vegetables. All right, you can put in turnip greens and you can put in jalapenos. And now you've got all these wonderful vegetables that are from all the different nations of the world. But what do you do with all those rich flavors of different vegetables? You drench it in creamy ranch. And you smother it in creamy ranch. And no matter how hot that jalapeno is, you put enough creamy ranch on that it's going to taste like creamy ranch. So that's what we've done with the salad bowl. We say, all right, come in and be a part of this culture, express yourself in this way, but then we have drenched it with one dominant culture and said at the end of the day, you're still going to taste like creamy ranch. So what is the image? I actually don't know. I don't know. That's why I have a question mark there. That's where people are going to start saying, well, what does it mean for us to be a genuine multi-ethnic church? I think what it means is, by rejecting these 2 other forms, is to say we don't have a color blindness. We accept the different ways that God has made us, and in fact rejoice in them and allow those flavors to shine out, but also to be part of a larger meal. So maybe it's the 7-course meal. One person told me it's like gumbo, because you get all the different flavors, but you still have one big soup. I don't know. I don't like gumbo, so I don't know. Or I've not had good gumbo, so let me know if you know good gumbo. So, but I don't know. What are the different ways of looking at what this multiculturalism can look like? We've got to think more creatively about that. Let me stop there and let's open it up for questions.